Good morning, good people. Good morning, and welcome to this worship service at the Unitarian Universalist Church of Tucson. My name is Reverend Bethany Russell Lowe, and I have the great pleasure and honor of serving as minister of this congregation. We are a left-heavy room today. This is interesting. It is not normal, no, interesting. Our community is striving to be as varied of the blooms as the Sonoran Desert, so whoever you are, whoever you've been, and whoever you are becoming, I invite you to bring your whole self, all of that, here and now. We no longer require that masks be worn in worship or in concurrent religious education, but if you are feeling sick, we encourage you to stay home and watch us on YouTube on Sunday mornings. And if you are joining us for in-person activities here at UUCT, our expectation, our hope is that you are vaccinated. I extend a special welcome to any visitors and invite you to fill out a guest information card. For those of you joining us online, you can go to our website and go to the newcomer tab and fill out a guest information card there. If you're joining us in person, head on over to Welcome Center behind you and to your left after worship, and there will be clipboards there with guest information cards for you to fill out if you want to stay in touch with us. And we will meet for social after the service right here in this same room. There is always coffee, iced tea, lemonade, snacks, and good company. Social hour food and refreshments are free for all, and donations are appreciated to help us cover our costs. We have 2 gender-inclusive restrooms down the hallway to your left. It's the first turn on the left, and there are 2 bathrooms right there. And we have a few announcements this morning. The first is that the board has its meeting next week, and they have a practice of sitting at a table at social hour the week before their meeting in case there's any feedback information you want to give them. So meet your board members at this purple tablecloth table in the front during social hour if you want to talk with them. And Jamili is leading a collection of peanut butter and other nut butters for Interfaith Community Services, one of our partners. You can bring them any week and put them in a blue box. It's by the coffee this week. And this is an unofficial competition with the Baja 4, so bring some peanut butter next week, okay? Or nut butter. We've heard that a few people are wanting to sign our membership book formally, so if that's you, if you haven't signed our membership book and you'd like to, meet me here right after service, right where I am, and we can do that. Plan to stay after church next week, March 17th, St. Patrick's Day, for a tasty French toast brunch prepared by Tucson Women's International League for Peace and Freedom, Tucson WILF. Lunch will be $10. You can donate more if you want to, and all the proceeds will go to this is an annual fundraiser for the Middle East Children's Alliance. And before worship next week, the welcoming team is holding a light breakfast and orientation right here at 9 a.m. in Cerritos. If you are new to Unitarian Universalism or new to UUCT, join us at 9. You can RSVP to Beth in the Welcome Center today. And this coming Saturday is the end of our active pledge campaign. So if you haven't submitted a pledge yet, either online, you can find, or on a form, you can find these forms on the usher's table, and there's a box to submit your pledge. Please submit your pledge so we can get to 100% participation today. And as we move into worship, I invite you to turn to a neighbor, someone you don't know super well yet, and ask them, where does goodness come from? Where does goodness come from? Our words for call to worship this morning are responsive, so I'm going to read the plain text and you will read the italicized words once they appear on your screen. Out of the stars in their flight, out of the dust of eternity, here have we come. Stardust and sunlight mingling through time and through space. Out of the stars have we come, up from time. Out of the stars have we come. Time out of time, before time, in the vastness of space, earth spun to orbit the sun. Earth with the thunder of mountains newborn, the boiling of seas. Earth warmed by sun, lit by sunlight, this is our home. Out of the stars we have come. Mystery hidden in mystery, back through all time. Mystery rising from rocks in the storm and the sea. Out of the stars, rising from rocks and the sea, kindled by sunlight on earth, arose life. Ponder this thing in your heart. Ponder with awe. Out of the sea to the land, out of the shadows came ferns. Out of the sea to the land, up from darkness to light, rising to walk and to fly, out of the sea trembled life. Ponder this thing in your heart, life up from sea. Eyes to behold, throats to sing, mates to love. Life from the sea, warmed by sun, washed by rain. Life from within, giving birth, rose to love. This is the wonder of time. This is the marvel of space. Out of the stars swung the earth. Life upon earth rose to love. This is the marvel of life, rising to see and to know. Out of your heart cry wonder. Sing that we live.
Good morning. I'm Thomas Gregg. I'm your worship associate for today. And our words for chalice lighting come from Reverend Dr. Kendall Gibbons. I will read these words on my own while Gigi lights our chalice. We are here because we are people of faith. Within each of us lives the conviction of a saving faith that could restore our broken planet and illuminate the lives of our siblings. Ancient wisdom teaches that we who would save the world must first save ourselves. We who would restore the planet must learn to restore the broken structures of the institutions closest to hand, to illuminate the lives of our companions and friends. To this end, let us center ourselves, acknowledging the trouble of mind and vexation of spirit that accompany us even here. Let us open ourselves to that creative mystery which is at work in our striving, whose servants we are and seek to be. If you are joining us on YouTube and have a chalice or candle nearby, please light it now.
And as you are able, would you rise to sing Break Not the Circle, hymn 323 in the gray hymnal? The words will be projected on the screen. Break not the circle of enabling love, where people grow forgiven and forgiving. Break not that circle, make it wider still,
earth is strong. It can hold pain and our joy, our love and our anger. Our shared bowl, which we use for joys and sorrows each week, is strong enough to hold the big rocks, our collective celebrations and mournings, and also the smaller stones that will be added to signify our individual joys and sorrows. Let us remember those desert people who came first in this place. We honor the Hohokam, the Yavapai, Tohono O'odham, the Yaqui, and the people who no longer exist as tribal entities here in Arizona. We who live in the desert know that water is a life-sustaining and scarce resource. Let's remember those who are walking through our desert right now without access to water. We also bring to mind those who are seeking to assure greater access to water in the desert. We pour water from a plastic jug, similar to the ones used by our ministry partner, No More Deaths. If you have a joy or sorrow to share, I invite you to go to menti.com and put in the code 1463186. If you are here and need help adding your thoughts to Menti, Brian Moon can help you do that. And now I invite you to come up to the table and create ripples of hope by putting a stone into the water to symbolize your joy or sorrow. Please form a line down the middle aisle and return to your seat using the outside aisles.
I'll read our Menti responses before our words of prayer. Someone is sharing joy to be recovering at home, watching from the couch with the cat. Oh, I hope you're snuggling well. I get to see my grandmother today. Oh, I hope there is joy laced there. Great appreciation for our Thai chefs from yesterday's pop-up and the good company at the gatherings. Yes, I heard that was great food and good company. We are going to end up loving each other. Just wait and see. One act of kindness sparks another. May we all remember the kindest moments we've been granted and pass it on to others in turn. So many blessings this morning, friends. Thank you. And grateful for a beautiful day and so many lovely people here. Me too. Our words of meditation, contemplation, prayer this morning are Reverend David Bambaa's poem, Back Scratcher. I invite you to put your body and your mind into a posture of centering as I read these words. The fall from grace, the great disruption of primordial order, the original sin, had nothing to do with eating apples or talking to snakes. The instrument of our fall was a wooden back scratcher. That piece of wood, bent at the end, so one piece can reach the unreachable spot, there, between the shoulder blades, down just a little bit lower, now up a bit, there, where the most persistent itch always takes up residence. Before the back scratcher, before that simple infernal device, we, like our primate kin, depended on others to do for us what we could not do for ourselves. You scratch my back, I'll scratch yours. Before the back scratcher, before that simple infernal tool, we needed each other to scratch that unreachable itch. The wooden back scratcher dissolved the bonds of reciprocity, unloosened the ties of community, and tempted us to believe in our own godlike self-sufficiency. And God walked into the cool of the garden and saw a primate standing alone. What have you done, God asked, that you stand alone? I have found a back scratcher, said the beast, and now I need no one. Poor beast, said God. Now you must leave this garden. In Eden, no one stands alone. Each depends on the others. And thus began our wandering, our pacing up and down the earth, scratching our own itches, pretending self-sufficiency, trying to ignore the persistent sense of loss, the vague yearning for a primordial order, a world where you scratched my back and I scratched yours. A wooden back scratcher is poor compensation for the gentle touch of a living hand.
Please respond by singing Spirit of Life, hymn 123 in the Gray Hymnal. Spirit of life, come unto me. Sing in my heart all the stirrings of compassion.
Reverend Amanda Popé from the chapter in her book, Humanist Voices in Unitarian Universalism. She writes, "Humanism is primarily about who we are connected to, what we think about each other, and how we work for justice in the world. No matter what else they believe, humanists insist on the inherent worth of every person. According to humanists, we are all part of one human family and are connected to the rest of the natural world, part of a cosmic story far bigger than we can imagine. Humanists believe that we're in that story together and that our work is to write our chapter with as much love and dignity as we can. In the humanist view, change will happen in our world because we make it happen, and the change will take all of us." She says, "I'm no longer interested in perpetuating the old paradigm of the humanist-theist divide. I never have liked polarities and dualities. They lead to all kinds of misconceptions, and this one is no exception. The humanists are old and stuffy and intellectual, one stereotype goes. They prefer debates to emotion, and they don't like to sing. Really, they're practically secularists. And who even knows why they go to church? The theists are leading us down a path toward evangelical Christianity," says another stereotype, "and all they care about is sneaking prayer into every service. If they have their way, there soon won't be any difference between us and the Presbyterians." Polarities breed stereotypes, and stereotypes are always oversimplified, often wrong, and usually pretty boring. On a practical level, the stereotypes, and more importantly, the whole idea of a humanist-theist polarity keeps UUs squabbling with each other rather than focusing on the real needs and challenges of the world. It holds us back, ironically, from living out the full promise of humanism, to honor both the real and important diversity and the deep unity of the human family, and to create a world where that whole family flourishes. What if, instead of imagining humanism as one end of a seesaw, we saw it as a possibility that is open to all, regardless of their metaphysical beliefs? That's the lived reality of deed before creed, the organizing idea behind Unitarianism. In 1866, James Freeman Clark, a Unitarian minister and early organizer of the American Unitarian Association, wrote, quote, "We think it possible to have a church and even a denomination organized not on a creed, but on a purpose of working together. Suppose that the condition of membership was the desire and intention of getting good and doing good," unquote.
When I was 7 years old, I tried to stump my religious educator. The now Reverend Dan Harper was setting up for a children's chapel downstairs in my home church. And as we were gathering, he came over to me and he said, "Bethany, in a few minutes, I'm going to invite all the kids to ask a big question that they want adults to tell the answer to. Can you think of a big question to ask us?" I knew immediately what I was going to ask. But before you hear the question I asked, you have to know more about the church I grew up in. It was a Unitarian Universalist church in a historic white steepled building in the downtown of Lexington, Massachusetts. Our pews were filled every Sunday with professors and scientists, researchers and corporate leaders. Humanism was the prominent theology I inherited from my home congregation. I was well into my teenage years before I remember hearing a minister say the word God in a reverential way from the pulpit. So Reverend Harper called on me, a 7-year-old, and I asked slyly, "What is God?" To my great surprise, this question did not stump Reverend Harper or any of the other adults. They all thought for a moment, and then they began to rattle off many different understandings of God. Everything, nothing, goodness, beauty. And then Tony, I remember this clear as day still, Tony, the dad of a friend, said, "I think God could be the fire that burns through the brush in summertime." The fire that burns through the brush. Over time, the at times self-righteous atheism I inherited from my home congregation softened. I first became quite ambivalent about the concept of God and then found some meaning in that concept, although I have preferred for a while now to not use language to name that force which is bigger than myself. I consider myself personally a panentheist, which means that I like to imagine that everything is divine. The living things and the not living things, the plants and the animals, and us too. It makes more sense to me to call everything divine than to believe that I could distinguish between what is and what is not sacred. And while my atheism has become somewhat closer to what some might call theism, what has never changed is my root in humanism. The first Humanist Manifesto was written in 1933 and had 33 signers, including a number of Unitarians. It was the first large-scale articulation of humanism as a belief system. Its authors named that the need for a humanistic philosophy arose from the advancement in science and the need for a philosophical or religious orientation that was compatible with the evolving world of science and reason. It names that, quote, "The universe is self-existing, not created, and that we human beings are in the process of becoming and responsible for our own futures." It also says that, quote, "The individual born into a particular culture is largely molded by that culture," end quote. And it acknowledges that how a humanistic philosophy can include much more than simply religion. Here's a longer quote. "Nothing human is alien to the religious. It includes labor, art, science, philosophy, love, friendship, recreation, all that is in its degree expressive of intelligently satisfying human living. The distinction between the sacred and the secular can no longer be maintained," end quote. 40 years later, the second Humanist Manifesto was written in 1973 and signed at this point by hundreds of people and at least a dozen Unitarian Universalists. Humanist Manifesto 2 acknowledges in the first few paragraphs that this second manifesto was a direct response to the atrocities of the Holocaust and the global wars that followed. The first Humanist Manifesto they found was too optimistic in light of that history. This second manifesto names the ways that we had become aware of the potential for technological advances to both help and hurt humanity and the world. It reads, quote, "In learning to apply the scientific method to nature and human life, we have opened the door to ecological damage, overpopulation, dehumanizing institutions, totalitarian repression, and nuclear and biochemical disaster," end quote. In the face of these challenges, this manifesto lays out the case of a humanistic orientation towards the problems of the world. It says, "Confronted by many possible futures, we must decide which to pursue. The ultimate goal should be the fulfillment of the potential for growth in each human personality, not for the favored few, but for all of humankind." In many ways, Humanist Manifesto 2 completes the world of the initial vision of Humanist Manifesto 1. It provides humanistic frameworks for an array of human and societal issues, including but not limited to ethics, reason, dignity, and also reproductive rights, civil rights, democracy, separation of church and state, anti-oppression, global community, peace, environmentalism, technology, and communication. It's the one to read if you really want to dig into humanism, I would say. And while it argued in favor of a fully humanistic organization to hold these ideas, it acknowledges, quote, views that merely reject theism are not equivalent to humanism. Views that merely reject theism are not equivalent to humanism. In other words, humanism is open to all people, no matter their religious orientation. Now, if that was a lot of quotes for you, tune back in. Because I know some of you loved it, but some of you were like, oh. Humanist Manifesto 2 concludes with this: we are responsible for what we are or will be. We are responsible for what we are or will be. Humanist Manifesto 3, I'm not going to go on this one, was written 30 years later and is much more concise than its predecessors. It evokes the prior two and acknowledges its lineage in them. The third manifesto separates humanism from supernaturalism, but does not mention humanism as distinct from God specifically. It defines humanism by what it is, rather than what it is not. Taken together, these three manifestos are a deep well of inspiration for Unitarian Universalists. Like Reverend Poppy in our reading, personally, I am no longer interested in the humanist-theist debate, and not only for the reason she mentions, those stereotypes. Like her, I don't find humanism and theism as opposites. Theism and atheism might be a duality, but not all Unitarian Universalist humanists are atheists. Not all humanists are atheists. For some, humanism is a complete philosophical mindset that requires an atheistic orientation, but it can also simply be an orientation towards how change happens in the world. A humanist approach to change says, we humans can make change happen. We are responsible for our actions. Can we refine and hone our understanding of humanism? Can we clearly claim the parts of humanism that work for us and not feel tied down by those that don't? Can we see humanism as a source of inspiration rather than a framework we must all adopt? Simply understood as the idea that we are responsible for what we are or will be, humanism is compatible with theism and as Gnosticism and atheism, as well as many other ways we conceive of God. Just because we believe in a higher power does not mean we believe that higher power controls us. We can believe in a God or not believe in a God or not sure, be sure either way or the other, or really not care and still believe in personal agency. Because the essence of humanism is about us, not about God. And humanism does put it all back on us, the good and the not so good. We are responsible for our lives and our actions. I hear humanists often wrestling with the question, why do bad things happen to good people? And the wrestle happens because any true humanistic answer to this question puts the responsibility on humans, on us. And sometimes we don't want to be responsible for that thing our ancestors did, or that thing we were complicit in, or that thing we let happen through our silence. It can be hard for us to conceive of our personal responsibility when it feels so heavy, maybe too heavy, and so removed from our personal actions. What can then stretch our responsibility from personal to collective? What frameworks and structures can hold our collective responsibilities? Reverend Dr. Kendall Gibbons, who you heard in our chalice lighting words, advocates for covenant as the thing that can organize our communities of humans. She writes, quote, our communities of memory and promise are founded upon covenants because we all need a defense against the impulse of immediate feelings that challenge our best intentions. It is necessary to be reminded from time to time of what you said you were going to do and what you really want over and above the lure of momentary comfort. Covenant is a word for the solemn promises that counteract the randomness of a future in which anything and everything is possible, by committing us in advance to certain relationships and values. If we are putting responsibility in each other, we are putting trust in each other. Covenants make that trust explicit and encourage us to be responsible with the trust others put in us. Reverend Dr. James Luther Adams advocated for a radically rooted humanism. He was a 20th century pastor and activist, and once wrote that if we Unitarian Universalists, quote, he once wrote that we Unitarian Universalists deny the immaculate conception of virtue and affirm the necessity of social incarnation. Now, by social incarnation, his words are dense, aren't they? Let's unpack them. By social incarnation, he meant education, economy, social service organizations, and political organizing, and more, anything in society. He believed that it was through our participation in these areas of society that we create justice and freedom. Reverend Adams writes, "The creation of justice and community requires the organization of power. Through the organization of power, liberated persons tie into history. Otherwise, they cannot achieve freedom in history. Injustice in community is a form of power, an abuse of power, and justice is an exercise of just and lawful institutional power," end quote. Humanism, too, is radically rooted in the structures of society. It asks for, maybe even requires, our participation for the common good, whether that be through education or economics, social service, political organizing, or any other area of society. I like to think that covenants and participation in that common good heal the wounds from that back scratcher. So can one be a Unitarian Universalist without claiming any aspect of humanism? I'm not so sure. Although we do not ask you to sign up for a creed here, we do ask that you abide by a covenant, agreements on how we will treat each other and how we will be together. These covenants, in Gibbon's words, organize us in our human pursuits. And although we do not force you to act, we do expect that you will bring our values out into the world to make our community better. Unitarian Universalism is deeply inspired by the same roots as humanism. We value science, democracy, participation in society, and we believe that people, you, are responsible for your actions. In many ways, Unitarian Universalism does ask that you adopt some humanistic principles. But humanism is not our creed. We are a non-creedal people. There has been a temptation at times in Unitarian Universalist history, and I'm not just talking about here, I'm not pointing at anybody. There have been temptation at times in our history to treat humanistic philosophy as if it were a creed. But we can't draw our circles smaller. Our ancestors built this faith so that we could draw the circle wide. Here, we invite you into this community to pursue your own spiritual journey. For some of you, that might be humanism through and through. That 1973 manifesto perfectly describes you, and that's great. For others of you, some parts of humanism might resonate more than others. And for a few of you, humanism won't have all the meaning-making tools you need on your spiritual journey. All of that is okay. The promise of Unitarian Universalism, why I have remained in Unitarian Universalists, is that we welcome you no matter who you are or who you've been or who you're becoming, so long as you maintain a commitment to love and justice and freedom. Unitarian Universalism promises to hold you through your transformation. We embrace you through the struggle of learning, and we celebrate your growth, which feels so humanistic to me. Because as science and technology and communication changes and grows, we humans grow alongside it. And this faith is big enough and bold enough to grow alongside us and alongside society. So friends, whether you are atheist or theist or agnostic, whether you are humanist or Christian or Jewish or Muslim or something else, whether you defy categories entirely and trust your own gut, creating your own sacred language for that which you consider most special, you are welcome here. Feel that. And feeling that, remember that part of your job as a Unitarian Universalist is to make every person you meet, here or beyond these walls, feel welcome and special in that same way, just for being who they are. May we make it so. Blessed be. and amen.
Good morning. I'm Robert Fisher Rao. Hopefully many of you have seen me around. Oh, is that better? Oh, yeah, okay. So I want to tell you a little bit about my journey to UUism. And it started about 15 years ago. I found myself in Long Beach, California, single dad with a girlfriend who had just moved across country to be with me. We were separated from family and kind of everything else. She worked remotely. I worked out in the field, and so therefore we didn't really have any coworkers or friends and things like that, and we knew something was missing. We needed to provide some structure to this little family that we were creating. And Julie said, maybe we should try the UU Church. On that first day that we drove in, I look over at my smiling face, eyes filled with hope and anticipation, and I said, do not put your eggs in this basket. I'm an atheist. I'm a devout atheist, recovering Methodist, so I did not feel like this was going to be the right thing. Why would I ever attend a church? But that first day, there was something special that happened, and we learned about the principles. And I heard, I believe, the inherent worth and dignity of all people. Wow, that got me in the feels. Justice, equity, and compassion in human relations, or what I prefer is be kind, be fair. These are the principles that guide that congregation. Didn't ask me to believe in anything that I felt hypocritical about. It made me feel valued and welcome. And so I found a philosophy I could get behind. A few months later, I find myself attending multiple times a week. How does that happen? Well, there was a choir, and I love to sing, and we found that there were other events that were going on at the church. So as we got into this, I found more than a philosophy. I found a community. And when I look out today and I see each of you, I know that I could mix up any 5 of us and put us in a room, and we'd probably have a good time getting to know one another and becoming friends. And I hope as I stay here and get to know you more, that's what will occur, because I found community there. I love the opportunity to meet with people who are older than me, people who are my age, people who are younger. All of that is a community that I just couldn't have found without the UU Church. But then it was also the special things that our church did for us. I was, I mentioned, a single father at the time. Julie and I are not married, but then I was a single father who had his kids every other week. And you've probably heard of OWL, which is an amazing program that we offer here at the Unitarian Universalist Church. But I had kids that were going to miss every other service. So they learned that, and they just made it so that OWL met every other week in coordination with my kids. I mean, that is a lot of scheduling. So thank you, Cheryl Kessler, who did that for my kids. It was amazing. But what I really felt is they accepted and valued my family structure, which is not traditional, but was welcome in that church. And so I found that, and it reinforced this feeling of acceptance. And over time, that acceptance led me to find purpose. I served on our board. I hosted many dinners. I sang as often as they would allow me to. I offered what was there, but none of that would be possible. None of it would be possible if someone hadn't have paved the way. And that way of paving the way is pledging. So my wife and I have been longtime pledgers to the Unitarian Universalist Church. Some years it is more than others, and I wish it could always be more. But it's the act of giving that makes it for a place where I could find a home. And for those of you who are here for the first time, welcome. I hope you find the same experience that I found. But for those of you who have been here for a while, you know how important it is, all the things that we do here. And by pledging, it makes it possible for us to create programs, to hire staff, to hire facilities. All of these things, it comes down to pledging, because that's what they're going to build the budget on. So if you could, those of you, I got a little note I got to read. Okay, so for those of you who could, An offering is now going to be collected to support the life and work of our congregation. If you are joining us on YouTube, please, you can send a check to the office or give online at uuctucson.org/donate. If you are here in person, the ushers are going to come around with baskets to collect your donations. Thank you so much. Give generously.
Thank you, Danielle. Thank you. Friends, I have a story for us. Are you ready? This is a once upon a time story, and it is a story that's emerged out of a lot of different cultures that's been adapted and adapted and adapted, and then we adapted it again, so adapted. So, I invite you to imagine a land long ago and far away. It is much different in time and space than our own. I want you to imagine that you are a village elder of this village, and our village grows wheat and other essential grains, much like Kansas. Imagine that your harvest this year has been the most successful ever, and you are so incredibly grateful for this bounty that you want to celebrate. How might you celebrate our success this year? How might you celebrate? Have a big feast? Have a party? Share it with others? All very good answers. Our village elder in this story decided to go with Frank and have a great feast. But this village only produces grain. How can we have a feast when there's no other foods to eat? I mean, bread is great, but we need some cheese for our fondue, right? What can we do? We can trade. Even better, what if we invite the neighbor villages to come and have a feast with us? For example, that village down the way, they have gardens that produce the most amazing vegetables you could ever eat, except for that one vegetable that you hate, right? They don't produce that one. And the village over that way, they have orchards with amazing apples and oranges and cherries, but they don't grow pears. They go bad too fast, yeah. And the village there around the bend, they have the best grass-fed, humanely raised cows and sheep and goats for meat and milk products. And they also have an almond orchard for almond milk. And the final village over that way has fields of grapevines where they produce the finest wines and some grape jelly too for us. So in planning this great feast, our village elder sends emissaries to each of these other villages. They write, "Please come to a great feast and bring the abundance of your own harvest to our feast. Our grain village will provide sweet and savory breads, music, jugglers, and soft pillows to relax on. When they receive the invitation, the veggie village elder replies, "Why, yes, of course we'll attend." And they send their RSVP. They send their RSVP right away. But then, as they begin planning in the veggie village their beautiful veggies to bring to the great harvest, a trusted but slightly worried first elder advisor responder, which I was like, first elder advisor responder? That's an awful long name. We just refer to this person as the FEAR. The fear says, "But wait, if we share our veggies with this village, we won't have enough for the winter. We might go hungry." Replies the veggie village elder, "What should we do?" Fear starts to hatch a plan. "I know what we'll do. We'll take our carts empty and covered. So we'll go into their village and we'll pretend we brought veggies, but then we'll eat at the feast and nobody will know the difference, of course." The village elder thought this was wise advice. However, little did they know that the orchard village was having the same conversation. And the grain village was having the same conversation, and the milk and cow village was, and pretty soon, nobody was bringing everything. On the night of the great feast, the grain village elder welcomed everyone with a short speech, and it ended like this: "Before we share this meal, let us give thanks. We give thanks for the work of the earth and the sun as they ripened the fruits of the earth to fill our bellies. We give thanks for the hands that have prepared this food so that we might eat it. We give thanks for the company gathered here, all those who make our village a place of abundance, especially by bringing their gifts to share with us in generosity." Then the grain village elder turned to the great feast and saw, wait a minute. My story is cut off. I think I've got some technological problems here. What do we think happened next? There is nothing for the feast except for sweet and savory breads. What did they do? They ate sweet and savory bread and gave thanks. What else did they do? Maybe they felt guilty. What else did they do? Oh, maybe the veggie village went back and got some veggies. We don't know. We don't know what happens. But this story can remind us that whatever happens, we are all always being invited to the great feast, and we have a choice. We can show up with our harvest, with our abundance, with our full selves, or we can listen to fear, and we can leave our gifts at home. And when they are preparing a feast, we have only ourselves to rely on, right? But that's the magic of community. We have ourselves to rely on. We get to make the choice. We get to do this because we are all in it together. And that is the work of the great feast, and that's a work that can be done by all of us because it takes all of us. So what will you bring to our great feast?
Before singing our last song today, please repeat after me. Olam. Olam Hesed. Olam Hesed Ibaneh. Yada 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 yada. Or yada da 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 da. That's close enough. Begin in prayer and move towards a statement of confidence. Would you, though I stay seated, rise and sing Olam Hesed Ibanai. Olam Hesed Ibanai.
words for chalice extinguishing from Reverend Maddie Sifantus. We extinguish this flame, but we keep its light in our hearts with its message of love and justice, taking it outside these walls to the world we live in until we are together again.